Hello, and welcome to Central Booking, where writers and readers are the authority. I'm your host, John Valeri. Today, it's twists, turns, and all these toxic things with New York Times bestselling author Rachel Howzell Hall. Rachel is the multi-award nominated writer of the critically acclaimed novels And Now She's Gone and They All Fall Down, as well as the Detective Eloise Norton series. She also collaborated with James Patterson on The Good Sister, which appeared in The Family Lawyer. Rachel makes her home in Los Angeles with her husband and daughter and works in development for an esteemed organization. Her newest, These Toxic Things, is a standalone novel of suspense. It introduces 20-something digital archaeologist Mickey Lambert, who finds herself piecing together a sordid history following her client's potentially suspicious death. There's a stalker, a serial killer, and the Golden Girls. What more could you want? An Amazon editor's pick and one of People magazine's 20 best books to read this fall, These Toxic Things may very well prove to be the author's breakout novel, as theorized by Booklist. Publishers Weekly awarded the title a starred review, noting, "This cleverly plotted, surprise-filled novel offers well-drawn and original characters, lively dialogue, and a refreshing take on the serial killer theme. Hall continues to impress." Of course, if you're looking for original, lively, and refreshing, you don't have to look beyond the author herself, because Rachel Howzell Hall is every bit as dynamic and entertaining as the books she writes. Hey everybody, welcome back to Central Booking. I am very excited to be in the virtual company of best-selling author Rachel Howzell Hall today. Her new thriller, These Toxic Things, is out right now, and you must pick it up. I want to show people real quick that if they get a physical copy of the book, and they have the hardcover, if they take the jacket off, there's this really cool stuff underneath.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. Welcome to the show, Rachel. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Happy Labor Day. Happy Monday.
To you.
Thank you.
Here we are laboring away.
Yes.
After Labor Day, but a writer's job kind of,
never stops.
Never. So before we get really plot specific in this book, I wanted to ask you, you acknowledge in the book that this is a bit of a departure even for you, and people who've read your books, they know that they're twisty, turny, you can't really see where you're going, but you say this sort of kicks it up a notch, even for you. So I wanted to ask, how so? How is this different, and what kind of considerations do you make when taking into account whether or not you want to take that big creative risk?
Right. So again, thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy to be talking about These Toxic Things. So this is actually my first book where I don't center myself, the middle-aged, mother, Angelino. Mickey Lambert is young. She is 24 years old. I haven't been 24, in 26 years or something like that.
Like 10 years, 15.
Oh, yeah. So it's a story of a younger woman who is pretty protected by her parents. She went to USC, which is basically like 7 miles away from where she grew up. So she's never been far. And for me, that's new. Kids nowadays, and I'm calling anyone under 30 kids nowadays, their lives are in so many ways different from ours. Everything's immediate. You don't have to wait until the summer to see your favorite, TV show, that type of thing, microwaves, all of it. And that was different from me. I didn't have an immediate point of reference for that. And I turned to my daughter and my nieces for a lot of, well, what do you say? And what do you all drink nowadays even, what things matter to you? And how do you find dates? I don't know these things. I've been married for 25 years. I don't know how you meet people nowadays, so that was a departure for me. Telling this story with little snippets of story. So Mickey, for those of you who don't know, this is a story about Mickey Lambert, who is a digital scrapbooker. She curates memories for people and uploads these narratives with pictures and a hologram of special moments in your life. And in the book, I give little pages of those things that she's curating for her client, Nadia Denham. And each little special thing has an illustration, a small illustration. And that was new for me. I was very excited that my editors at Thomas and Mercer were like, yeah, that's cool. You're actually going to get me an illustrator? Yeah, yeah. So that was a departure for me. And then, this entire book, the way it was incepted, who bought it, that was huge for me. I've been with Forge since the first in my series, Land of Shadows, 2014, it was published. And they have been wonderful to me. And when it was time to shop this book at the start of the pandemic back in February last year, I wanted more readers and more marketing. And, I also wanted to be paid. Right. And it was time to start thinking, for another house. And that was a big departure for me. I'm incredibly loyal. And so the thought of it, scared me. But, we're constantly reminded on the other end that this is a business. And so I needed to think like that. So all of this was a big growing experience for me. And that's the best kind of writing, right? When we don't know something and we strike out and we try and figure it out, because then we use it to write other books. Yeah.
So, let me ask you this. I was going to be plot specific and I will get there, I promise. But I love to read the acknowledgements in books. And sometimes I think they're as fascinating as the books themselves. Yeah. And one of the things that I love about this, and it relates to what you were just saying, is you acknowledge, both your editors. So your editor from your previous life, your editor at Amazon. And I don't, see that happen very often when an author moves to a different publishing house. But it makes sense because you take all of that knowledge with you, and then you just sort of envelop more in. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about the skill set that your first editor helped you to develop, and then, what your new editor brought into the mix for this book.
Well, at first, Kristen Sevick, who's my editor at Forge, she believed in me. My very first book was published in September 2002, and it took this long for me to land another publishing contract. And she was the one who read the Lou Norton story, Land of Shadows. And she's like, I absolutely love this. And over the course of 4, 5, 6, 7 books or so, she helped me figure out what it was that I loved writing about, and helping and giving me the opportunity to meet, Lou and Miriam Macy, and They All Fall Down, and Grayson Sykes, and now she's gone. And I learned so much from her, and I was fostered and nurtured and celebrated at Forge. And I think that's a valuable part of my growing up as a writer. I think, my day job, I am a fundraising writer. I'm a fundraising writer at a very big medical center out here in Los Angeles. And my job is to write acknowledgements, all executive communications, proposals. And basically, my job is one of expressing thanks and appreciation to donors who help make all the research that we do there possible. So I've always been in this field, and I've always believed in gratitude and relationships and honoring those who have helped you get to where you are. And so I wanted to acknowledge, even though this wasn't Kristen's book, I wanted to acknowledge that she played a huge role in helping me fully realize and be bold enough to do something such as this. So, yeah, I see what you're saying, and yeah, you don't usually thank the other editor, but I'm not everybody. Well, and my mama always told me to say thank you, and so this is a thank you to Kristen.
Well, good job, Mom. And that's great. And I love how you're like, hey, I'm writing vignettes now. How cool is that? It's it's pretty awesome. So I did want to ask you a bit more about your new heroine, Mickey Lambert. She has the coolest job. You sort of already mentioned it. She's a digital archaeologist or archivist, and she helps to build memory banks or visual scrapbooks for people. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a bit more about that, how that idea came to you, and also how it lends itself so beautifully to, intrigue and sort of sleuthing, because it makes the sleuth much more credible, I think.
Thank you. And that's my dog, who's just my blind golden retriever, who's padding around looking for her Kong. That's her she's looking for the Kong. So I started this book, again, early February, when the whole pandemic started, and we didn't know really that this was going to affect us the way it did. And so at that time, you're starting to kind of clean things out. It's February, getting into the new year, you're cleaning things out. For me, I was looking through my daughter's like baby box. So where her baby book is and her swim cap and all that stuff that you keep. And I was looking through pictures and how her physical pictures stopped after maybe 4, because that's when you started taking pictures with your camera, and that's where they lived. And now we have this whole generation of kids basically who don't have physical mementos, right?
Right.
And in some ways that fascinated me, in some ways that horrified me, because it's like, well, how do you look back at special things if there are no tchotchkes, there are no souvenirs that last? And so that idea of not having pictures kind of bothered me, and how my daughter lives in her phone. It's like, well, this is fascinating. So I wanted to take something that's very old fashioned, which is memories and scrapbooks and pictures and all the rest of it, and make it into this kind of high tech thing. You know how your phone tells you, oh, last year this time you were at wherever, and that's your memory. So it's like, well, what if she did all that kind of thing and told a story about, my carpal tunnel syndrome thing and the summer I had this, and uploaded it into new tech. So combining the old and the new, I wanted to do that. And I also wanted to tell a story about mothers and daughters, and how mothers and daughters constantly, especially us Gen Xers with our daughters, we borrow each other's stuff. We mix the old with the new. My daughter's in my clothes, I'm in her clothes. We constantly help shape and reform each other. And we kind of, we encourage that kind of thing. So I wanted to show that. And that's in a way archiving and changing and remembering, because it's like, we'll go into CVS and it's like, we're in the Wet and Wild section. You're a guy. So Wet and Wild is cheap makeup. And back when I was my daughter's age, a Wet and Wild lipstick was like $1. It's now like $4. And, we go into CVS and it's like, I tell my daughter, oh, I used to wear that shade and it was only $1. So you get like 30, and, you'd have all this makeup. So it's, even though it's buying makeup, it's more than that. It's sharing memories. It's, looking back and looking forward. And so I wanted all this stuff that's old and new in one story. So that's who Mickey is. She's a mix of the new and the old. She goes to USC, which is a very old university that has this new major called narrative studies, which, I was an English American literature major because there's no such, it was creative writing or something like that. So yeah, it's a book about old and new, remembering and making old things new again. So long answer to a short question.
No, I love it. And I found myself relating because my mom and I have a 10 o'clock date tonight with Golden Girls reruns. So it's just.
Oh my gosh. So, and that's the other, I love Golden Girls. I watch it every night on Hulu.
Yep.
If Hulu would ever take it away, I have the DVDs and I watch it there, and my daughter watches it and we watch it together. And there are times when we're at dinner, and because my husband watches it too, we're at dinner and we like do Golden Girl trivia on each other. And that makes us, that's one more thing that we're doing together, old and new, and one more thing to share. So yes. Golden Girls.
Yeah, there's just nothing like it anymore. I mean, it actually holds up, and how many things do.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's sweet. I like that.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I got the DVDs. I got the bootleg of Golden Palace. But that's
that was so awful. Although I was very happy when it came out, but then watching it when I was a kid, like, what is this?
Yeah.
But now it's like,
left the house.
Yeah.
It's all over. So anyway, so back to Mickey. So she ends up working with Nadia Denham, who's a curio shop owner, and the shop itself is just amazing. I mean, you really feel like you're living within it. But so she's sort of tasked with creating a memory box for this woman who's developed dementia, and she wants to keep some of these very precious memories alive.
Yeah.
And then she ends up dying under circumstances that may or may not be suspicious.
Right.
But Mickey, keeps on with that task. And I'm wondering, if you can talk about the process of her sort of archiving those memories for Nadia, because one, it sort of draws her into a mystery. But what I also love about it is, even though, Nadia is no longer alive in the book, she is very much a presence due to her memories and what she leaves behind.
Well, first, the store, when we're talking about old and new, the store is in an old part of Los Angeles, the Crenshaw area. And it's in the process right now of being remade, so gentrification. So once again, old and new. And the store is one of those kind of weird antique / junk stores, not necessarily like Fred Sanford and Sons, but not Sotheby's either. So it's, it's this place where weird things are found. And Nadia, yes, she's old, she's aging, and she is starting to forget things. And she wants to curate these 12 special items before she forgets them. And before she can finish the project, yes, she dies under either weird or natural circumstances. And Mickey's, she wants to finish this project for Nadia, partly because the woman paid for it, but also she's a little nosy. She's a kid who's never had anything bad really happen to her. So she has no fear in that. So that was fun, like putting this young woman in a place that's disordered and kind of cool, but what is that over there? And what is the smell? I mean, you've been in stores like this, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it's like cool, creepy,
Yeah, but you do find like random good things in there. And as I was doing promotion for this early in the summer, I created these special boxes of toxic things. And I went to like so many thrift stores in Los Angeles looking for random cool collectible tchotchkes and maps. And I found letters written by, someone in 1947 and postcards and all this stuff, all this crap that people just kind of give away. Pictures. It's like, well, who gives away pictures? Mm-hmm. So it's a very curious thing. And Mickey, as she's trying to figure out if Nadia died naturally or there were some shenanigans, she's trying to find the origins of these special things. Meanwhile, she's trying to figure out her own life story, her own origins, how she came to be precious and loved by her parents.
Sure. And, so she's in the store and Nadia dies, and then she ends up sort of the in-between between, we'll say, the siblings who were left behind. So there's Riley and there's Dexter, and then there's just, Mickey in the midst of those two who are like constantly squabbling. So I'm wondering if you can talk about their sibling dynamic and then how that sort of heightens the overall suspense when she is that middleman sort of between them.
Yeah. No, siblings are always interesting in terms of favorites and who mom likes, and they are not blood siblings. Nadia rescued Riley, who's actually the store owner of these toxic things. She's had her, since she was, very, very, very young, and basically adopted her. And so Riley has a different relationship than Dexter, who is, he's a photographer. He's never really around. There's some concern about him not really being interested in the store and possibly selling the store to, the very greedy the real estate developer. Their interests in Nadia and the store are at odds. And Mickey, of course, she's trying to ingratiate herself with Riley just to make her job easy. She needs Riley to get into the store to finish her mom's project. But, Dexter is also kind of hot. So in addition to that, he is kind of like, well, what's his story? Why is he around now? What is his deal? And does he know anything about how Nadia died? So, once again, she's in between relationships. She just broke up with someone who, is the owner of the memory bank. And so she's kind of rebounding. And again, she's someone who's never had big problems. So now she's there's a death and her breakup, and now there's this store manager who doesn't want her there, and the sibling who kind of doesn't either, but he's kind of hot, but I'm kind of seeing that guy. So it's all, kind of like mixed up for her. She does a lot of growing up, and I wanted to keep throwing things at her, because a lot of times in life, as we know as adults, crises don't wait for one to end for the other to start. And I remember in my 30s, it's like 30s is when you really grow up. But you get some, you kind of get some practice in your mid 20s. But for someone like Mickey, it was time to put her, to get her to start building up her armor.
Sure.
Yeah.
And as if things weren't complicated enough, this is not a spoiler, but readers learn really quickly that in addition to everything that's going on with the job, Mickey has a stalker. There's also a serial killer at work. And I wanted to ask you about balancing storylines, because that's got to be a difficult juggling act. But then the other thing too is maintaining, the urgency or the suspense of the question of whether or not these things are actually related.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like onion stories. I like onion stories and slow burn stories. And the older I get and the more I delve into my own origin stories and my friends' origin stories, nothing is ever as it seems. There's always something bubbling beneath, something you didn't know, some explanation that you bought maybe 10 years ago, but it's starting to be creaky and makes no sense. And these desperate things that happen in your life seem unrelated, but sometimes they're caused by the other, one other thing. So I wanted that. And yes, at times it was difficult kind of planning that. But in my mind, it made sense because I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what I wanted to reveal. And I am an outliner and a plotter. And I actually I use index cards and spreadsheets, and I take, legal size paper and tape them all together so that I can look at like the 3 or 4 plot lines that I have to make sure that one, I answered a question there, I picked up this string there, and it just runs. So I'm very analog when it comes to tracking these stories. I don't think I am not smart enough or have the capacity to do it in my head. I just actually today helping my daughter with the college applications, she's applying to like 15, 17, 100 colleges. And initially I had it all in my head, but today it's like, I can't remember anything. If you did the essay, which essay, so because I can't keep it all straight, and I want to keep it straight. And so I rely on things like my cards and my spreadsheets and even my editors to say, hey, we haven't heard from that serial killer in like 2 sections. You need a chapter here and here and here. So yeah, I love it because that's what life is to me. The slow burns, not in regular real life. How many times have you got on the bus and someone's like, we can't stop the bus and you have to disarm the bomb? And that typically doesn't happen. They're more quiet, scary, nasty things. And those are the scariest things to me, where things are just snails in the garden, just gnawing and gnawing away until all of a sudden the freaking roof caves in, because it's been... The termites have been eating at that for years and years and years, and you just didn't know it. I like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And I got to say, it was so well done. And I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many balls in there, but they all landed.
They all landed.
Did.
And that's one reason why I love my my editor at Thomas and Mercer. She trusted that they would land, and if needed, she would help me land them. And so I really, I appreciate her and their trust in me in this story. Because yeah, on paper, it looks hella twisty. But then it's like, well, if I broke out the schematics of a 747, I'd say that's freaking impossible. You can't fly that. That makes no sense. But it's like, that's why you don't ask people like me to build airplanes, because the engineers are like, oh yeah, there's nothing. So I look at it like that. It's like, yeah, it's twisty. It's supposed to be. If you want to look at the bones, yeah, it's gonna be, because it's like that.
Right.
But trust me, and I'm glad that they did.
Me too. It's a beautiful thing. So a couple more questions, and then I am going to let you get to dinner because you deserve to eat.
Thank you. Food.
I know, I live for it. I'm like, food and the Golden Girls in this book. I was like, I'm sold. And murder and mystery and mayhem. Like, hello.
No, one of my favorite scenes was a scene later in the book where Corey, Mickey's mom, and her are in her apartment after a very bad day, and they sit together and drink wine and eat popcorn and watch the Golden Girls. And although my daughter is only 17 and can't drink wine, I'm looking forward to helping her, get over heartbreak in that way. I mean, we do it in some ways already, but that was probably my favorite chapter to write because of that.
And it resonated. I'm like, oh, yep.
Yeah.
Let me ask you too. One thing I love is your books tend to be very sensory, very visceral. Like you really get a reaction in the reader. And I read probably on your website, that you still have these memories from childhood of like sirens and shots and sneakers on the ground. And you sort of bring all of those things back. So I'm just wondering if you can talk about creating that sensory experience, because it's very palpable.
Yeah, no, I collect things like Mickey. We've all had experience where you'll never forget them. What separates writers from other people, from non-creatives, non-artists, we collect them and we either write it down or we draw it. We do something with that and it stays with us, and we visit it and touch it. And, my memories are probably like threadbare because you go back and they're like your touchstones. And, I try to take all those things that have, the gamut of emotions, maybe the happiest, like the Golden Girls thing, to what scared me. And I use those memories and remember how I felt. And I use them for books. In this or in this book, trigger warning. And for me as an artist, it's like, yeah, it's triggering. That's how I get over it. Or that's how I try and figure it out. Because if it didn't trigger me, I wouldn't get up at 4:40 every morning to write 90,000 words and then go to work and then do all this other stuff. Writing is my way of giving myself therapy. Because these things scare me, these things make me happy, these things crack me up, and I want to share them because they may do the same for you, and together we may figure some things out. I like harvesting my emotions because I want it all to be meaningful, and I want it to be authentic, and I want the reader again to trust me, because I'm not trying to go for the cheap emotion. I'm not trying to do the twist just because I can. I don't want to be that kind of, kind of person. I'm one of those magicians who actually love magic and who will go and sit and just look at other magicians and it's like, I want that trick. How, Houdini used to like break and dislocate his fingers and little pockets of skin. He'd like slip things. I don't do that. But that's the type of technician I want to be. I want to bring all of it honestly and as meaningful as I can. And yeah, I'm hoping that all that I do creates some type of response in the reader, because I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah,
So
no, I love that so much. And I think fiction is kind of the perfect lens to explore all these real world issues because it makes it more palatable, than
yeah,
maybe nonfiction, but we can all relate to it in some way or learn
yeah,
something new,
yeah.
which I think is great. All right, I'm really going to let you go soon. Two more questions if you don't
Uh-huh.
mind. But for the people out there looking for words of wisdom, I always like to ask the best advice that you can remember ever getting in terms of a creative or writing life, and then the best advice that you never got and had to learn for yourself throughout the experience of actually doing it.
The best experience, the best piece of advice. Who told me this? I don't remember who told me this, but I know Walter Mosley says it all the time. Write every day, even if it's crappy, even if it's a page. Just get up and put your butt in the chair and move your hand against a page. And I believe that because I'm in some ways new every day. I've learned something. Something has pissed me off. Something has happened to me the prior day that can go into this story. And if I miss it, then it's gone, So getting up every day to do it, even if it's the worst stuff that I've ever written, I'm still getting it down on paper. I don't miss that opportunity. And it's a writing muscle. I get to write every day for work. And so I have that muscle to just get up and do it. At work, I can't say, oh, I'm not feeling it. I'm just the muse. And no, they're paying me to write. And so therefore I write. And to be able to do that, you have to do it every day. So that's good. What I didn't understand and what I'm just, starting to realize now is to disconnect. It can be stressful, especially those of us who live in our head and who are constantly analyzing and comparing and neurotic enough that it's like, was it good enough? Is it going to work? For those of us who've had very difficult publishing experiences, like I've had very difficult publishing experiences up until 2014. I'm still shell shocked. I'm still traumatized by nobody wanting anything and constant rejection and my numbers not coming in. And, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? It's constant. Am I doing enough? And like this past week when Toxic Things came out, I found myself spiraling, and no one tells you that you can push away.
Right.
And I pushed away. I didn't go onto socials. I didn't respond to emails. I didn't do anything, and just I watched this afternoon. I watched Poseidon Adventure with my daughter. We went to Whole Foods and got, I just stopped. And it was a little difficult for me to do that because I'm sure it's like, well, why didn't she like my tweet? Why didn't she do this? Well, I needed to take care of me. And I felt that I was going crazy, constantly checking my ratings, constantly checking the numbers, constantly Googling to see if anyone said anything positive about the book. It was driving me crazy. And I felt like I was tight and crazy. And I said, this is crazy. I need to stop, close it down, go do something else. And I had to learn that for myself. And if anyone's out there, I say, do that. If you find yourself just thinking about it too much and fearful and you can't sleep and you have to get up and you have to refresh, it's okay to step back. I mean, we're not doing brain surgery here. You can step away and go over there. And so, yeah, I'm doing that more. So, yeah.
That's such great advice because we're all living in our phones and our computers, and especially now, and it's like there is no turning it off because you can do everything until you want to do everything all the time, and people expect you to, which is a whole other part of
it's
that.
Like, no, I'm not. I can't do this. I have to watch out for me, and I have to be present for the people who I love directly. I want to be there for my daughter, my husband, and my family.
Yeah,
and me. I mean, I like me, and I want to be fresh for other things by constantly taking it all in and not feeling good enough. I won't have the audacity to write the next story that looks very twisty on the page because I'm still doubting that this worked. It worked. It's out. There's nothing I can do about it except enjoy it, talk to you, and move on to what I'm working on next.
Well, there you go. So speaking of what you're working on next and being at your computer at 4 a.m, might you
Yeah.
give us just a little teaser of what we might expect next from you? And
Yes.
then you can go
Next
easy.
summer, I'm in developmental edits right now. And the book is called We Lie Here. And it's another young woman's story. Her name is Yara, and she is returning home to Palmdale, which is like nearly maybe 70, 80 miles north of Los Angeles in the Mojave Desert. And she's planning her parents' anniversary party. Well, while she's up there, her distant cousin comes to tell her something important, and her distant cousin dies before she could tell Yara what this something important is. And so Yara wants to know what's going on with my family. So it's another origin story. It's another family tree story. It's another secrets story. And I love it. I love it. There are no illustrations in this one, but there are other twisty things that on paper is like, what? But it works. It'll work.
That's awesome. I love it. All right. So you are going to go unplug finally, and everybody else is going to go click buy and get These Toxic Things by Rachel Howzell Hall. And I have to tell you, I was reading this on Kindle. I loved it so much that I said, I need the real thing. So I turned up the Kindle and bought the book because there's something about having the real thing. But
Yes.
People need to get it.
You
You will not be disappointed. And thank you so much for taking time out of your Labor Day to be here, Rachel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, this was no labor, and I really appreciate you inviting me on.
That's it for this episode of Central Booking. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing.